Back in the workshop at last. The Bantam engine as it came out the frame was very corroded and looked sorry for itself. It had caked on dirt and oil encrusted in the bottom. They obviously need blasting, but it's always a good idea to take this encrusted dirt and oil off before you start blasting, as it acts as like a shock absorber, taking the strength away from the blasting and taking forever to get back to the base metal underneath. And normally after cleaning, a good soda blast is enough to bring the cases up to a factory finish nearly. But in this case the corrosion was a bit deeper, so I had to hit them with an ultrafine glass, crushed glass media. This brought them back to usable, but it tends to leave a film on the top of the casing which makes them look almost a sandy finish. So I tend to rub them back with a fine wire brush, usually stainless. It has a burnishing effect and again brings the cases back to original condition. Takes a bit of time, but it's well worth it, and it's just keep it even. Of course, after this you give it a really good wash, a spray with kerosene, and again checking it over, giving it a clean. Any bits that you've missed, you use I tend to use alloy wheel cleaner. Again, gives a nice factory finish to it all. Get it all even, clean out any little bits that you might have missed, and very importantly, of course, get rid of all the glass. The outer clutch case, of course, needs to be polished, so after the blasting it was onto the polishing mop, starting off with this fine abrasive, almost Scotch-Brite type mop to get rid of the sandy finish, followed by the usual working through the grades of polish, and gradually it comes back to a nice shiny finish. Here I'm putting the guts back into the engine cases, starting off by warming up the cases so I can get the bearings in. I use a blow lamp to heat them locally, that way there's less chance of hurting the seals and things like that that come in afterwards. So the usual 9, 6, 3, 12 tapping of the bearing goes in. As long as it goes in square, this isn't too bad. Repeating this procedure and getting all the bearings into place. In the back half of the casing I'm using a drift here because of the recess. Again, taking care not to drive the bearing in crooked. With the bearings and seals in place, this side of the casing can now take the gearbox. This is the early 3-speed unit, and to be honest it's very hard to put it together wrong. It's a lovely little design. It's a bit fiddly getting everything to fall into place, but again it's a lovely design. It'll just click and everything will work. With that crankcase full of gearbox and crankshaft, it's a simple case of repeating the procedure on the other case. Heat up the cases, put the bearings and seals into place, and get ready to put the two halves together. On the earlier Bantams there's a circlip goes between the inner and outer ball race on the flywheel side, and a seal on the outside to stop the oil coming out and contaminating the flywheel. So here I'm just making sure it's seated correctly and in the right place. Followed by the bearing, and then last of all the oil seal was tapped into place. The last piece on this casing is the drive sprockets oil seal. It's enclosed in a little triangular housing, so there's a gasket and a plate there. Both need to be put in place. One trick here is put the goo on, put everything in place, but don't tighten the screws. Leave them, pinch them up a bit, but leave them loose enough so that when the casings go together and the collar is inserted onto the final drive, it all centres up, and then tighten the screws with everything centred up on itself. As usual, just a fine smear, no need to go nuts with it. And these are the three little screws that you semi-tighten until everything's pinched together and is located and self-centered. With this done, it's prepare the cases, again a fine smear, no need to go nuts, and then put the two halves together gently, locate them as best you can, and then press together with the judicial help from a rubber mallet if required. With the cases located correctly and everything free to turn, put the screws in, the 1/4 Whitworth, and tighten and pull the cases together evenly as possible. Not forgetting the single screw that goes in from the other side. We've all tightened up by hand to a nicely torque. One final tap with an impact driver just to drive them home. Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching.